The first time I got on bus 7, I thought missing it would be the worst thing that could happen to me. That was before I learned there are worse things than being left behind. There is being carried exactly where people want you, sitting 2 rows from the back with your backpack under your knees, while girls who smile at teachers plan the rest of your life in whispers just loud enough for everyone to deny hearing. In my first life, Bus 7 was taking the Senior Science Extension Group to the district showcase, where our environmental engineering project was supposed to be judged for a university scholarship. My project, my water filtration model, my late nights, my mother's kitchen table covered in charcoal dust, sand trays, spreadsheets, and cheap tubing from the hardware store. I had built the prototype from scraps because I could not afford the sleek acrylic kits the other teams bought online. Then, the morning of the showcase, I boarded the bus carrying the final data binder, and Celia Hart slid into the seat behind me with her 2 shadows, Maeve and Tilly, wearing the kind of sweet, nervous faces girls wear when they have already hidden the knife. Halfway to the venue, I heard them laughing about the leak, about how my binder would be missing the real results, about how the judges would find a screenshot in my folder proving I had copied Celia's design file from the school server. I turned around. I warned them the bus had a front camera. I told them if they did not stop, I would report them the second we arrived. They looked frightened for exactly 3 seconds. Then Celia cried so loudly the driver pulled over, and by the time we reached the showcase, the story had changed. I had threatened them, accused them of theft, and tried to scare them with fake claims about cameras because I knew I had cheated. My bag was searched. The planted screenshot was found. My binder had been swapped. My scholarship vanished before lunch. Years later, when I died after working a double shift in a laboratory stockroom, still cataloging other people's clean equipment because my name had never recovered, the last thing I remembered was that school bus pulling away from the curb and my own stupid relief that I had made it on time. Then I woke up standing at the school gate again, rain misting against my cheeks, bus 7 idling in front of me, Celia Hart waving from the window, and my phone showing 8:02 a.m., 3 minutes before departure. I did not run. That was the first act of rebellion, and it looked like laziness to everyone else. In my first life, I had sprinted across the wet driveway with my binder pressed to my chest, terrified of being marked late because punctual girls were trusted girls and trusted girls got recommendations. This time, I stood under the jacaranda tree outside the gate and watched the bus doors fold open like a mouth. Mr. Vale, our science coordinator, stood beside the luggage compartment with a clipboard, counting heads. "Mara Reyes," he called. My body twitched at my name. Old obedience rose hard and fast. I could still feel the vinyl seat, the damp window, the way Celia's laughter slid through the engine noise. I could still see the judge's table and the screenshot with my login stamped at the top. But the second life had given me one useful gift. Memory had become evidence if I treated it correctly. I lowered my umbrella just enough that the front office camera could see my face clearly, opened my phone, and recorded the scene. Bus 7. The clock on the school gate. Mr. Vale calling my name. Celia visible through the third window, looking not worried that I was late, but irritated that the script had not started. I whispered into the recording. District Science Showcase morning. I am still outside the school gate at 8:03. I have my own sealed binder and prototype case. I have not boarded bus 7. Then I did the thing the old me would have considered unforgivable. I turned around and walked toward the front office instead of the bus. Behind me, Mr. Vale called, "Mar, we're leaving." I lifted one hand without looking back and shouted, "I'm unwell. I'm checking in at the office." It was not a complete lie. My stomach was folding in on itself, my hands were cold, and my heart felt like an animal trying to escape a cage. Celia's face appeared in the window as the bus doors hissed closed. She mouthed something I could not hear. I smiled at her through the rain. Pattern interrupt. The trap had been built around me sitting in row 6, and row 6 was going to be empty. The front office smelled like wet uniforms, paper, and the lemon spray Mrs. Anwar used on the counter every morning. She looked up from the attendance screen and frowned when she saw my blazer damp at the shoulders. "Didn't your group just leave for the showcase?" "The bus hasn't left yet," I said, breathless enough to sound genuinely sick. I need to report that I'm not boarding and ask for my project materials to be kept with me. I'm feeling unwell, but I still want to attend if another staff member is going later. Mrs. Anwar blinked. Students almost never describe their own movements with that much care unless they had either done something wrong or survived someone who had. Where's Mr. Vale? At the bus. And your materials? I lifted the sealed binder and prototype case. In my first life, Celia's group swapped my binder under the seats during the bus ride while Maeve distracted me with questions. This time my binder had not left my hands. Please note I still have them. Mrs. Anwar's eyes sharpened. Office staff understand documents because documents are how chaos becomes someone's job. All right,
Sit there.
I'll call Deputy Principal Rowe. Through the window behind her, I saw Bus 7 finally roll away from the curb. Celia's face disappeared behind a smear of rain. For 1 second, terror punched through me. What if missing the bus only gave them time to plant something worse? What if the evidence on board vanished without me there? What if the showcase went ahead and they claimed I stayed behind because I knew I was caught? Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Where are you? A second later. Get on the bus. Then, Mara, don't be weird. We need you there. The messages came too quickly to be concerned. They were instructions from a plan losing its center. I screenshotted them and placed my phone face up on Mrs. Anwar's desk. Can you please see that these are coming in after the bus left? She read them, then looked at me with a different expression. Who is sending them? I don't know yet, I said. That was true enough. The number was hidden, but the desperation had Celia's perfume all over it. Deputy Rowe arrived at 8:12 with his coffee in one hand and the expression of a man who had not planned for student drama before first period. In the first life, he had been the one to tell my mother that the evidence was concerning, and that my reaction on the bus suggested consciousness of guilt, a phrase so ugly I remembered it better than some relatives' birthdays. This time, he found me seated beside the office copier with my binder sealed in a clear plastic art sleeve, my prototype case at my feet, and Mrs. Anwar already printing my attendance note. Mara, why aren't you on the bus? He asked. A simple question. A trap if answered emotionally. I folded my hands. I felt unwell before boarding. I came to the office before departure. I still have my original project materials. Since the showcase affects scholarship nominations, I want staff to record that my materials did not travel on Bus 7. His eyebrows moved slightly. Why would that matter? Because in another life, a fake screenshot appeared in my folder after row 6. Because the girls on that bus are about to say things they think engine noise can bury. Because I have died once under the weight of adults asking why I did not protect the record sooner. I said, because there have been issues with project files being accessed without permission, and I don't want confusion about custody. It sounded formal enough to make him uncomfortable.
Good.
Formal language forces adults to choose whether they are ignoring a concern rather than simply missing a feeling. Before he could respond, the office phone rang. Mrs. Anwar answered, listened, then held the receiver away from her ear slightly. It's Mr. Vale from the bus, she said. He says Celia Hart is asking whether Mara is coming in another car because she has Mara's backup binder with her. The room tightened around that phrase. Backup binder. I had never given Celia one. I looked at Deputy Rowe. I only have one binder. He stared at the sealed sleeve in my lap. Are you sure? I opened the front cover under the office camera, showing my handwritten title page, my signature, the ribbon marker, the tiny coffee stain on the bottom corner from my mother's kitchen. Yes. Mrs. Anwar spoke into the phone again. Mr. Vale, do not allow students to open or alter any project materials. Keep the item visible until you arrive. Then she paused. Her eyebrows rose. What do you mean? You can hear them? That was the moment the second life became stranger than revenge. Bus 7 had been a replacement vehicle from the district fleet because our usual bus had broken down. In my first life, I had seen a black dome camera near the driver and warned Celia about it, thinking it was recording video only. I had not known the replacement buses had a new safety system connected to the school transport office, front camera, aisle camera, driver microphone, and an emergency intercom that automatically transmitted audio when the driver pressed a dashboard alert. Mr. Vale, apparently annoyed by the noise after I missed boarding and suspicious because Celia kept demanding to know where I was, had pressed the wrong button while calling the office. Instead of muting the cabin, he opened the onboard audio feed to the front office speaker. At first, everyone heard only engine rumble and scattered chatter. Then Celia's voice came through, sharp and furious, because she thought the adults heard only Mr. Vale. She ruined the timing. The binder swap only works if she's sitting there. Mrs. Anwar's hand froze around the receiver. Deputy Rowe slowly set down his coffee. The office speaker crackled. Maeve said, "Can't we just put the screenshot in the backup binder and say she gave it to us?" Celia snapped, "No, idiot. It has to be found in her bag or Mr. Vale won't believe she hacked my file." Tilly laughed nervously, but she didn't even get on. "Then we say she stayed back because she knew." Stop panicking. My skin went cold. There it was. Not a clue. Not a suspicion. A confession rolling down the highway at 60 kilometers an hour, delivered by girls who thought the bus was a private room because I was not there to warn them otherwise. Mrs. Anwar reached for the recording button on the office phone. Deputy Rowe whispered, "Do not speak." I almost laughed. In the first life, I had been the one telling people to be quiet because of cameras. This time, silence belonged to the adults, and it was finally useful. Celia kept talking. That was the terrible beauty of it. People who believe they control the room do not know when to stop performing for their own supporters. "Listen," she said, low but clear through the office speaker. "Mara's whole thing is being the poor genius. If her binder looks copied and mine looks original, nobody will fight it. They'll think she got desperate." Maeve murmured something I could not catch. Celia answered, louder. "The fake login is already in the screenshot. My cousin made it from the server page. We just need it in her materials." Tilly asked, "What about her actual model?" "It will leak. I loosened the valve yesterday during setup. She'll look sloppy before the judges even get to the data." My hands flew to the prototype case at my feet. I had brought the model home after setup in this life because I remembered the leak, but I had not known it was Celia. My original case was sealed. My valve was safe because I had refused to let the model out of my sight. Deputy Rowe looked down at the case, then at me. Shame, surprise, and administrative panic fought across his face. The feed crackled again. Mr. Vale's voice interrupted from the front of the bus, faint, because he was turned toward the road. "Everyone keep your voices down. We are 10 minutes from the venue." Celia muttered, "He's useless." Then, louder to her friends, "When we get there, Maeve, you cry first. Say Mara accused us on the bus last week and you felt unsafe. Tilly, say you saw her with my USB near the lab computers. I'll handle the judges." My stomach twisted. In the first life, that was exactly how it had happened, only after I confronted them. They had rehearsed their fear before I gave them a reason to use it. The phone line beeped as Mrs. Anwar transferred the audio to Deputy Rowe's computer for recording. "Still live," he whispered. She nodded. Then another voice came through. A smaller one. Not Celia's circle. "Are you serious?" It was Daniel Kim, one of the Year 11 helpers sitting near the front. In my first life, Daniel had avoided me after the accusation. Eyes full of apology, he never spoke. On the feed, he said, "You planted that screenshot?" The bus went silent. Celia's voice turned sweet and poisonous. "Daniel, mind your business." He replied louder, "Mr. Vale, you need to hear this." Then the feed exploded into movement, shouts, a scrape of seats, and Mr. Vale saying, "What is going on back there?" Deputy Rowe grabbed the office phone. "Mr. Vale, this is Deputy Rowe. Keep the bus parked when you arrive. Do not allow students to leave with any materials. The office has heard the cabin audio." That sentence traveled through the speaker and detonated on board. For 3 seconds, nothing. Then Tilly said, very clearly, "Oh my God." Maeve started crying for real. Celia said, "That's illegal. You can't record us." Mrs. Anwar muttered, "Funny, now she knows policy." Deputy Rowe's voice hardened in a way I had never heard from him in the first life. Mr. Vale, secure the students and call the venue coordinator. I'm sending Principal Hart and IT with a second staff car. He hung up, then looked at me. Mara, I need you to remain here. In my first life, remaining had meant being held while other people carried my story away. This time I said, I will, but my project materials stay with me or with Mrs. Anwar in view of the office camera. Mrs. Anwar answered before he could. They'll stay with me. Deputy Rowe nodded, not offended, perhaps because the evidence still hummed in the room like a moral alarm. I texted my mother. Something happened with the showcase. I am safe. I did not get on the bus. Please come if you can. She called immediately. I declined once because the office was still moving around me, then sent. Not emergency, but please come. In the old life, she had arrived at the venue after the accusation, still wearing her supermarket uniform, face pale with confusion as administrators asked whether I had been under academic pressure at home. This time, I wanted her in the room before anyone used our rent, our bills, or my hunger for the scholarship as motive. She replied, leaving now. Then, do not let them make you explain alone. I stared at the message until my vision blurred. Some mothers only need the truth early enough. The staff car left 8 minutes later with Principal Hart, the IT coordinator, and Ms. Cade from Science. I remained in the office with Mrs. Anwar, Deputy Rowe, my sealed binder, my sealed prototype case, and the recording file now saved in 3 places because Mrs. Anwar had the energy of a woman who trusted neither teenagers nor administrators with a single copy. While we waited, more information crawled out of the morning like insects under a lifted stone. The backup binder Celia claimed to have was photographed by Mr. Vale on the bus before anyone touched it. Its cover looked almost like mine, but the label was printed, not handwritten, and the coffee stain had been photocopied in the wrong corner because whoever made it did not understand stains are not design elements. Inside, according to the first staff photo, was a screenshot showing my school login accessing Celia's project folder at 10:42 p.m. the night before. There was one problem. I had been asleep at 10:42, phone charging beside my mother in the living room because our apartment had one reliable outlet near the heater. That was not proof by itself. The better proof came when IT checked the server and found no such login event. The screenshot was fake, just as Celia had said on the bus. My prototype valve, the one Celia claimed to loosen, was intact in the case beside me because I had not sent it on the bus. The model at the venue, however, the display stand I had left yesterday under a dust cover, had been tampered with. Ms. Cade video called from the showcase hall and showed the spare tubing sliced near the rear connector. In my first life, that leak had happened on the judging table, muddy water spreading across the white cloth while Celia made a soft little sound of pity. This time, the leak was discovered before the prototype arrived, attached to a setup I had not touched that morning. Pattern interrupt. Every trap had activated without the target inside it, and each mechanism pointed back toward the hands that built it. Celia's parents reached the school before my mother did. Of course they did. Her father was a council solicitor with a calm voice and a car that looked like it had never known crumbs. Her mother arrived in cream trousers, hair pinned back, already saying misunderstanding before she crossed reception. In my first life, they had stood beside Celia while my mother sat alone, apologizing for asking too many questions because she did not know the language of school power. This time, Mrs. Anwar kept me behind the counter partition until my mother arrived, which I realized later was not procedure but protection. Celia's mother looked through the glass and saw me. Mara, she said, soft and wounded, this has clearly become bigger than it needed to be. I'm sure the girls were just frightened. I did not answer. Silence is easier when there is a counter between you and someone else's performance. Deputy Rowe came out of his office and said, Mr. and Mrs. Hart, please wait in conference room 2. We'd like to speak with Mara, her father said. You will not speak with a student witness without her parent present, Mrs. Anwar said from her desk. Student witness. Not suspect. Not upset girl. Witness. I could have kissed the copier. My mother arrived 3 minutes later in her black supermarket polo, rain in her hair, cheeks flushed from hurrying. She took one look at me, one at my binder, one at Celia's parents behind the glass, and said, "Who tried to put what in my daughter's bag?"
No, hello.
No, are you sure? No shame arriving before facts. I stood too quickly, and the chair leg scraped. Mom. Her hand found my shoulder. I'm here. In my first life, I had spent months wishing she had said that before I had to defend myself. In this one, she did. The conference room filled with adults and evidence. Deputy Rowe played the bus recording from the beginning, not the messy middle which mattered. It captured Celia reacting to my absence, discussing the binder swap, naming the fake screenshot, admitting the valve tampering, assigning Maeve and Tilly roles, and then discovering the audio feed. Celia's parents listened without moving at first. Then her mother placed a hand over her mouth, not in horror at what her daughter had done, but in horror that it had been recorded so clearly. Her father asked whether the audio capture was lawful under school transport policy. Deputy Rowe slid the district bus safety notice across the table. Emergency intercom and cabin audio may be transmitted to school transport staff when activated by driver or staff during supervision concerns. Mrs. Anwar, who had joined as note-taker and possibly guardian angel, added, "The driver activated it before the confession." The office did not solicit private conversation. Celia's father's jaw tightened. My mother leaned forward. "Your daughter planned to accuse mine of cheating. Are we discussing bus buttons?" He looked at her then, really looked, perhaps noticing she was not the frightened woman from my first life who had asked whether maybe I had borrowed a file by accident. "We're discussing process," he said. Mum nodded.
Good.
Process says she was outside the gate at 8:03, in the office at 8:06, with her original materials. Process says your daughter had a fake binder on the bus and said exactly what she meant to do with it. The room changed when she said process. It was no longer their word. It belonged to us too. Principal Hart joined by video from the venue, face grave. Behind him, I could see students clustered in the showcase hall, displays half set up, judges whispering near registration. Celia and her friends had been separated. Daniel Kim had given a statement. Mr. Vale had surrendered the fake binder. The venue coordinator had agreed to delay our category judging. "Mara," Principal Hart said through the laptop, "if you are willing, we can arrange staff transport to bring you and your project here under supervision. You are still eligible to present." For a second, I could not breathe. In the first life, the showcase had become the scene of my execution. Now they were asking me to return with my name intact. My mother squeezed my shoulder. "Do you want to go?" she asked. Not should.
Not must. Want.
The answer rose slowly, surprising me. "Yes," I said. "But my materials travel sealed, and Mrs. Anwar keeps a copy of every photo." Mrs. Anwar smiled. Already done. I arrived at the showcase 40 minutes late in the principal's car, with my mother in the back seat beside me and my prototype case sealed with office tape like museum evidence. The venue was the Civic Center Gymnasium, all polished floors and folding tables, the air buzzing with nervous students and overworked judges. In my first life, I had entered through those doors already accused, with Celia crying near the registration desk and everyone looking at me like I had carried a disease. This time, the doors opened and conversations paused for a different reason. Celia sat at a side table with Maeve and Tilly, each separated by a chair, faces blotchy. Daniel stood near the water station, pale but upright, his witness statement folded in his hand. He looked at me and gave a tiny nod. I returned it. Not forgiveness, not friendship. Recognition. Mr. Vale could not meet my eyes.
Good.
He had believed them too quickly in the old life, and some part of me wanted his discomfort to have homework. Ms. Kate escorted me to my display table, where the damaged spare tubing lay inside a clear bag. My original model was set beside it after Principal Hart cut the seal on camera. The judges were told there had been a materials integrity issue, which was adult language for attempted academic murder. I set up my filtration system with hands that shook only a little. Charcoal layer, sand layer, gravel, mesh, intake valve tight, output tube clear. The water ran through clean. Not perfect because prototypes never are, but clean enough to show the data was real. When the judges approached, I expected to feel vindicated. Instead, grief hit me. In the old life, this table had been where I lost not only a scholarship, but the belief that hard work protected itself. Now I had the work back, but the girl who lost it still existed somewhere in me, watching cautiously from the back row. I presented for both of us. I spoke about low-cost filtration for flood-affected communities, about replaceable charcoal cartridges, about flow rate, turbidity, failure points, and why cheap systems needed reparable parts. One judge asked whether my late arrival affected my preparation. I looked at the sealed evidence bag with a sliced tubing, then at the clean water dripping into the beaker. It clarified my failure testing, I said. Ms. Cade coughed into her hand. My mother smiled like she wanted to cheer and sue someone at the same time. Celia did not present. Her team was withdrawn pending investigation, though her father insisted that withdrawal was not an admission. Maeve cried through her statement and said Celia told her everyone exaggerated in competitions. Tilly said she thought the binder swap was just to scare Mara, which is one of those sentences people use when they want intent without consequences. Daniel admitted he had heard rumors about fixing my project the day before, but thought it was trash talk. I should have said something, he told me near the exit after judging. In the first life, he had never said that. He had lowered his eyes for a year, and I had learned that unspoken apologies are just guilt looking for a place to sit. This time I said, "Yes, you should have." He nodded, accepting it without asking me to soften the blow. "I did today." "Yes," I said. "You did." That was enough. The awards were announced at 3. I did not win first. A team from Northview with a solar desalination model did, and honestly, they deserved it. I won the Resilience and Innovation Commendation, which would have annoyed me if it felt like pity, but the lead judge added, "This project demonstrates practical engineering under constraints," and the presenter defended her design with exceptional clarity. Exceptional clarity. Not poor girl. Not accused girl. Not lucky girl.
Clear.
The scholarship panel advanced me to the interview round. My mother cried quietly during the applause, wiping her cheeks with a napkin from the refreshment table. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" "For the other time, I didn't know how to help you." She did not know what she was naming. I leaned into her shoulder. "You helped this time." She held my hand all the way back to the school. The formal fallout took 2 weeks, because schools move slowly when the wrong families are embarrassed. Celia's parents argued that the bus recording captured minors without explicit consent. The district responded with transport policy. They argued that teenage boasting was not proof of action. The fake binder, server logs, sliced tubing, Daniel's statement, Maeve's statement, and Celia's own words responded better. IT traced the fake screenshot to a home printer file uploaded from Celia's school tablet the night before. The valve tampering was harder to prove directly, but the bus confession carried it. Celia was suspended from the science extension program, removed from scholarship consideration, and barred from representing the school in academic competitions for a year. Maeve and Tilly received shorter suspensions and mandatory ethics review. Mr. Vale was reprimanded for failing to secure project materials during transport and for allowing students to handle another student's supposed backup binder without verification. The school introduced sealed project custody forms for competitions, staff-only transport of research materials, and a rule that replacement buses had to have functioning safety audio explained to supervising staff before departure. Students called it the Bus 7 rule. I pretended that sounded silly. Secretly, I loved it. A rule means the wound became architecture. Celia returned after suspension with her hair shorter and her smile sharper. People still gathered around her, but differently, like standing near a heater that had once caught fire. She found me outside the science block one afternoon, where I was washing charcoal dust from a filter tray. "You planned it," she said.
No hello. No mask.
"You missed the bus, so we'd talk." I dried my hands slowly. "I missed the bus, so you couldn't put anything in my bag." "Same thing."
No.
"One is protection. The other is your confession." Her eyes narrowed. "You could have stopped it before we left." There it was, the final accusation of exposed people everywhere. You failed to save me from myself. I looked at her clean shoes, the careful rage in her face, the girl who had once stolen years from me because I thought warning her was the moral choice. I did stop it, I said. I stopped myself from helping you hide it. She hated that. I saw it land. Then she walked away, and I let her. The strangest part was how quickly the school tried to turn me into a lesson. Teachers invited me to speak about academic integrity. The principal mentioned student courage in assembly while carefully avoiding names. Younger students asked whether it was true the bus had recorded everything, whether Celia had screamed, whether I had known like a psychic.
I said no to the psychic part.
I did not say. I died once because I was on time. Some truths do not fit inside school corridors. Instead, I focused on the practical things. Keep your own copies. Photograph your work. Do not leave project materials unattended because someone looks friendly. If something is wrong, call a staff witness before touching it. The same sentences, repeated until they sounded boring. Boring is good. Boring is how safety enters culture, without asking for applause. At home, my mother cleared a shelf for the commendation certificate beside our microwave because our apartment had no study and the kitchen was still where my future happened. I applied for the scholarship interview with a corrected incident report attached, not hidden. In the first life, I spent years trying to outrun the accusation. This time, I learned to include the truth before anyone else summarized it. The interview panel asked about the bus incident delicately, like touching a bruise. I said, "It taught me that engineering is not only about designing systems that work. It is about designing systems that fail visibly enough to be fixed." The panel chair wrote that down. I got the scholarship. Not the biggest one. Enough. Enough to buy proper tubing, a refurbished laptop, and a little desk for our living room so my mother's kitchen table could finally be used for dinner more often than prototypes. The first night I studied at that desk, I missed the old chaos and hated that I missed it. Survival makes strange attachments. My mother put a plate beside me and said, "Eat before the charcoal does." I laughed until I almost cried. Years later, I became a civil engineer specializing in flood-resilient community water systems, which sounds noble when written in a conference bio and much messier when you are standing knee-deep in mud arguing about pump access with a council contractor. People praise my obsession with redundancy, custody logs, visible failure points, and transparent reporting. They did not know those habits began with the school bus I chose to miss. In my office, I kept a small model of Bus 7 on my shelf, a cheap toy I bought online after my first major project passed inspection. My colleagues thought it was a joke because I traveled badly. In another way, it was a memorial to the girl who once believed making the bus mattered more than knowing who controlled the journey. One summer, I mentored a group of high school students preparing engineering projects for competition. A quiet girl named Anika stayed after the workshop, holding a prototype pump and looking like she might be sick. "My teammates keep taking the data home," she said. "They say I'm paranoid for wanting copies." I looked at her little pump, at the tape around the tube, at the way her fingers gripped the base like it was the only proof she existed. "Make copies," I said. "Write custody notes. Ask your teacher to store the original. Paranoid is what people call you when your caution inconveniences their access." She stared at me. "Did that happen to you?" I thought of Rain on the school gate, Celia's face in the bus window, the office speaker carrying a confession down the road, my mother arriving before shame could sit beside me. "Yes," I said. "And I learned missing the ride can save the project." She smiled a little, not fully understanding, but enough. On the 10th anniversary of the showcase, the school invited alumni back for a STEM night. I almost refused because old buildings remember you badly if you let them, but my mother said, "Go stand where they couldn't bury you." So I went. The driveway was smaller than I remembered. The jacaranda tree had grown wider. Buses lined the curb for an excursion, new models with clear safety stickers near the doors. Audio/visual monitoring may be active for student safety. I stood under the branches and watched students climb aboard, laughing, carrying poster tubes and prototype boxes, trusting the morning because most children should be allowed to trust mornings. Mrs. Anwar still worked in the office, older now, glasses on a chain, lemon sprays still on the counter. She hugged me like I had been missing for a week instead of a decade. Still keeping copies? She asked. Still making people sign for them, I said. We both laughed. During my talk, I told the students about designing systems that reveal tampering, about why transparency protects honest people, about how every project needs not only a good idea, but a good chain of custody. I did not name Celia. I did not need to. Afterward, near the science display, I saw Daniel Kim, now a teacher trainee, supervising students with a clipboard. He looked nervous when he recognized me. Mara, he said, I think about that bus a lot. Me too. I teach my students to speak up early. Good. He nodded, relieved, maybe forgiven enough by the work if not by me personally. That was fine. Not every apology needs a hug. Some need a habit. Outside, as evening settled, one of the buses started its engine. For a moment, the sound reached into my ribs. Then it passed. Just an engine. Just a bus. Just a vehicle, not a verdict. Before leaving, I walked to the spot where I had stood in the rain at 8:03, choosing for the first time not to make the bus. The pavement had been resurfaced, but I knew the place. I could almost see my younger self there. Blazer damp, binder in her arms, terror disguised as stubbornness, phone recording because memory had finally learned to protect itself. In another timeline, she ran. She boarded. She warned the girls. She became the villain they had rehearsed. I used to ache for her. I still did, but gently now.
She was not stupid.
She was punctual, trusting, and trained to believe problems should be solved privately before adults were inconvenienced. This life taught me the opposite. Inconvenience the adults early. Preserve the materials. Let people who build traps sit inside them long enough to describe the walls. My phone buzzed with a message from Mom because some things never changed. Did you eat at the event or are you coming home hungry? I smiled and typed, coming home. Saved you a seat on the bus, I'm not taking. She sent back, very funny. Drive safe. I looked once more at the buses glowing under the school lights, doors opening and closing, students stepping on and off with their futures still unbroken. Then, I turned toward the car park. In this life, I missed the bus on purpose. In this life, I did not warn the bullies about the system listening. In this life, their confession arrived at school without me saying a word, and for once, being left behind was the reason I finally moved forward.